Well, hello there. Welcome to Marriage Unmasked. If you have ever been in a season of your marriage where you're like, man, I really love my spouse, I just don't really like them right now. That's what we're talking about today. What if I don't like my spouse anymore? And we've all been in those kind of seasons. The resentment starts to grow, hurts start to pile up. You just go through this season where the attraction is fading and you feel like you don't even like your spouse anymore. And you're like, what happened? Where did that attraction go? Why aren't we connected that way anymore?
And there's no need for shame. I know sometimes that thought can creep in where you start to judge yourself, like, well, you shouldn't be thinking these things. There's no need for shame, and we don't want you to feel any shame either, because being honest and open, allowing your heart to feel and allowing yourself to process, that's really so key. And inviting God into what's really there, right? If you deny it, if we pretend it's not there, how can we invite God into that? So that's actually really important, is to have that openness and that honesty, not necessarily with your spouse, right? You don't need to necessarily let them know.
I don't like you.
But but being open with God, that's really such a key. In Proverbs 4:23, it says, above all else, guard your heart, because everything you do flows from it. And that is so important, especially when we're talking about this topic, because not liking your spouse, that really starts with deeper heart issues. And so when we notice this is happening, I don't like him anymore, I don't like her, let's look at what's going on deeper, what's going on with your heart, and invite healing in. And know too, like, this is just a heart issue. It's not, this is a hopeless marriage issue.
Yeah.
Adam and I have walked through this, and we know so many couples are, and so it's not hopeless. It's like, there's a wound and you're having some symptoms, or you're having a sickness and you have symptoms. This is kind of a symptom, is this not liking. And so it doesn't mean like this is the diagnosis, okay, end of marriage, you're never going to like him again or her. It's just that, okay, let's look at what's going on then to be able to move forward in a connected way again.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to get under the surface. Why is this coming up in our marriage right now? Why are we in this season? And there's a number of different reasons that could be. One of them could be resentment. There's all these unhealed wounds, these hurts that are building up over time, where you are now in contempt or you don't like them anymore because of all these resentments. And another reason that could be under the surface of this is an emotional disconnection, just a numbness. Maybe you've been going different paths, you haven't really been connecting as much. You're feeling unseen, unheard, maybe even unsafe. Maybe some of those wounds have also moved into a feeling of unsafety in your marriage, and you're not really engaged. Your heart isn't really involved as much, and that can cause this dislike of your spouse.
And I know a big one for me was, sometimes we don't like how I'm using air quotes, make us feel, because really nobody makes us feel anything, but we can get into that later. But sometimes we don't like how they make us feel about ourselves. Maybe you feel powerless, or maybe you feel ashamed. And then we associate them with those feelings. And I know that happened for me in our marriage. I remember a time when I really didn't like Adam, and it was because of stories I was telling myself about him as a man. And he was showing up in a more passive way, and we had had some really painful instances with his parents, and he didn't handle them in a helpful or a strong leading way, and I felt like I had to handle them, and I had to protect myself, and I was coming from a childhood where I also felt unsafe, and I also felt like I had to protect myself. And so I wanted to feel safe with Adam, but I then learned from this incident, or a couple of them actually, that I wasn't safe with him. He didn't step up, he didn't protect. And so then I created this story about him, like, he is a passive man, that he's passive, like that's who he is. And over time, that story kept going. And finally, when we were more in a healing season of our marriage, and I probably didn't even like say passive out loud, because we didn't really have language for that back then.
No, we didn't.
Because this was long, long ago, back in the old days when they had telephones plugged into the walls, right? um, We actually did have a corded phone for a long time. We got made fun of for that.
That's dating us, yes.
But anyway, and so I didn't probably have language for that back then, and you might not have language, or you might not even be verbalizing a lot of the things that are going on in your heart. I think this was more in my heart, right? It was deep in me where I had these stories about, yep, he's not a man, right? He's not going to keep you safe. He's not going to stand up when he needs to, right? And it was later on when I realized, okay, what that behavior was is like passivity. And so then I actually started using that language almost as a weapon. So it wasn't until a lot later in our marriage when we were starting to heal, when Adam actually called me out on it one day. And he's like, I don't appreciate when you call me passive, right? I really lost this curiosity about him. And I had now, made his identity as you are passive. And I was looking at him instead of like how God sees him, right? Yeah, I love you. You're a treasure. You're a gift. And you're a human being who struggles with things. And you are growing, right? You're in process and all those things. I was just like, no, you're in a box. You're a passive man. And so he really called me out on that and said, I would appreciate if you would instead say, like, you were struggling with passivity in that moment, instead of like putting him in that box. A loss of curiosity also can really change the dynamic in your marriage, where now you don't like them either, because again, you're just not seeing them. We see ourselves, and sometimes we see our own struggles and we give ourselves grace. And when it comes to our spouse, we're like, no, you screwed up, you hurt me, right? And we just kind of see them in a box.
Yeah, and that honestly, I suffered from the same thing, because I would often label or look at Cara as controlling, or bossy even, and I put her in that box too. And it takes analyzing that and being like, no, I'm not. I don't need to put her in a box. I don't need to label her. I can have curiosity at times. Yes, she comes across a certain way, but that isn't who she is. I don't have to equate that with her identities.
And I think the curiosity really looks like, okay, he is acting passive right now. Why would that be? Or if I am being controlling or bossy, like, what's going on in her heart that she feels like she needs to control this situation?
Yeah, curiosity is so powerful. If we would practice curiosity, it would really change things a lot.
Yeah, because it helps us to move away from seeing them as the problem, right? And you're not going to like somebody who you think is the problem, right? Like,
Exactly.
you're going to want to get away from them. And that's what I did. That's what I wanted
That's
to
what
do.
I did too. We would separate. We would disconnect, whether it was just emotionally or even physically. We would disconnect from each other because of that lack of curiosity and seeing each other in these negative ways. Um, it makes me think of Adam and Eve. At first, having this wonderful marriage, I'm sure it was perfect, it was beautiful, it was wonderful. And then there's the fall into sin, and then we see this crazy change. Like, they do not like each other. I mean, almost right away, because what are they doing? They immediately go into the self-protective mode, so that when God is calling them out and seeking them out in love to call them back to Himself, they are so quick to hide, and then they're so quick to blame each other, and they start to really throw each other under the bus and say, no, it was her fault because she made me do this, and no, it was the snake's fault. Like, they're just throwing out blame and accusation everywhere else, trying to protect themselves in that situation. And it makes me wonder, what was it like after that for a little while. I mean, obviously they went from a perfect marriage to all of a sudden tension and problems and all these things that we have to deal with. I mean, they were relying on God for His grace, and they relied on a relationship with Him still, even though it was difficult now because of sin. But they must have had a season there where they just didn't like each other, where they were suffering from what had happened. A lot of times that same sort of dynamic can repeat itself in our marriages as well. We can have like shame, we can have self-protective things going on that cause us not to like our spouse. But God has a way through. Even when we're in this state where we're not liking each other, God is still at work there. He wants us to be digging down deeply into these things and understanding the reasons why we you're showing up that way. He wants us to deal with our own heart issues, like the pride that is hiding in our heart, maybe the self-protection, that desire to protect ourselves instead of give from a full place, or that desire to be in control, to make sure things go our way, that self-centeredness, all of that. God wants us to start to open those things up. And that can happen when we don't like each other. Now we can dig deeper and we can get at the root cause and start to heal some of those things. And he especially invites us to bring those kind of things, those heart issues, to him. And that's where they get healed, is really in the light of his presence and with his perfect love. And so that we deal with these deeper things, and we're able to go into a place of more connection and begin to like each other again.
And it's important during these times, like, you're usually not spending maybe as much time together because you don't like each other. So it is important to prioritize this quiet time where I am working on my own healing, where I'm working on unveiling what's underneath. And so it can be really helpful to carve that time out and be very intentional with it. And one great question to reflect on is, what am I protecting myself from in this marriage? Because that could reveal a lot, right? Maybe like, where have I hardened my heart? Maybe even ask yourself that more than once, right? Because it could be many different things, and that's okay if it is. And just taking it a little bit at a time. You don't have to heal everything in one day. This is a journey. It takes time, and it doesn't mean you can't reconnect before all things are healed. You still can reconnect, but you're still working on and prioritizing healing your own heart. When we start to take this time and focus on what's going on inside of us, then we're healing, and then we feel safe again to open our heart, because we're starting to take ownership of what's going on for us. And one big step in that process of opening your heart up again is to really grieve. Take the time to grieve, and it's not just like linear, right? It can come and go. You might feel fine one day, you might not feel fine the next day. And so it can be different from day to day. Dislike often hides unspoken grief, and you don't even maybe realize that it's there, right? For me, I remember thinking like, I'm so sad, and I felt so exhausted because my desire was really to be able to relax into my husband's strength, right? I really wanted a man that I could relax into, and that was behind a lot of the hurt that I had. Like, I had to grieve that. Like, okay, that didn't happen, right? These painful things happened because he did choose passivity in a moment, or multiple moments. But it's, do I want to hold on to that resentment forever and let that just break our connection? Or do I want to allow myself to, process that hurt and grieve that dream that I had? And that's a good goal, right? That's the goal, to be able to relax into my husband. But men are never perfect, just like wives are never perfect. And you probably have your own things you've grieved. For me, and so it's okay. And I don't need to bring that to Adam. I don't need to bring that to my husband and say, you know what, I'm grieving this about you. Bring your grieving to God. He is a safe place. It's not really about your spouse anyway. Like, this idea that I had, these dreams I had, those are my dreams. That's not something that Adam necessarily needs to feel like, okay, yes, he failed in that, a bunch of shame. And I definitely have brought that to him. So I know this is not a good idea. Yeah. And so, bring it to God, because he's a completely safe space. Forgiving is a big part of this too. No, so many times when I feel stuck in, like, I don't feel connected to him, I'm upset at him, right? I knew there was like a hurt there. Okay, I felt my emotions, like, I processed this. Why am I still not feeling okay with him? Why am I still not liking him? Why am I still just kind of choosing disconnection? And a lot of times God gently reminds me, like, you need to forgive, right? You didn't actually release that need to punish, or that need for justice. And there is a need for justice when we are hurt, and when we hurt each other, and there isn't, and God brings justice. And so he wants us to practice that forgiveness. And we teach a whole thing about that in our Healing Your Marriage course, because I think there's so much more to it than a lot of times what Christians talk about, like, just forgive, right? We really get deeper into that, and teach you how to really walk through that process of forgiveness in a healthy way.
Yeah, that's really important. And another thing to do as you are trying to heal this is to really reconnect with your own heart. I think sometimes what happens is we close off our own heart. We don't really fully understand what's going on inside of our self and our own emotional center. We're just numb. And we're not going to like our spouse when we don't understand what we're even feeling in the first place. And so it could be that you've lost touch with your own emotions and you need to go back into identifying them. Sometimes it's really helpful to just sit in silence for a while. No radio, no nothing, like you're just sitting there in silence for like 20 minutes by yourself. And you'd be surprised the things that can start to come up inside of yourself. Awareness is really the first thing, to be really aware of what's going on inside, and tuning back in to your heart is really important. And maybe you've lost trust with your own heart. Like you don't really trust yourself. You've been talking to yourself in a certain way. You've been shaming yourself even. Maybe even for not liking your spouse. You could be shaming yourself for that, or who knows what else.
Yeah, not creating a safe space to feel, right? Yeah. When you're like, no, you shouldn't feel that way, or no, I don't have time to feel this emotion. Like, I have other things to do, or whatever. We distract, right? We push our feelings down, and then we create this unsafety with our own heart where it's like, I don't really want to share with you what's going on because you're just going to tell me that I shouldn't feel that way, or you're just going to tell me to ignore it or move on. This is all kind of subconscious, but that does happen, and we need to work through it.
Another really helpful practice is to start to choose curiosity over criticism and be very intentional with that. That you start to really look at your spouse and get really curious. What is the pain that might be behind the things that you're not liking about them? What is actually going on deeper underneath their behavior, underneath their words? Curiosity, like we mentioned before, is so powerful because the more curious you are, the more compassionate you can be for those things that you're seeing under the surface.
And as you start to open your heart and heal what's going on, you can start to make these small bids for connection, like Adam likes to call them, bids for connection, where maybe it's like he always tries to like reach out and touch me, and sometimes I don't always appreciate that.
You have to know your spouse too. You have to know what is an appropriate bid for connection in a certain situation.
Yeah, but maybe it's like even softening your tone, right? You're intentionally choosing, hey, I'm gonna talk to him in a soft way. Or maybe you say thank you, that you appreciate them for something. You maybe do touch them if they like that. Adam loves that. So if I reach out and touch Adam, he's like on cloud nine.
Totally different
environment. Right. Maybe it's even just looking at them. I know a lot of times when I'm feeling disconnected and I'm not even really liking Adam, I don't even really look at him. It's like there's so much pain there. I don't even want to look at him and see him as a person. It's true though.
Yeah, it's good. No, it's really good.
With the eyes, right? It's like kind of shifty eyes, like I'm just looking everywhere else.
I've caught myself doing that too. Like if we're in disconnection, and we're even having a conversation, I'll catch myself staring like out the window as I'm talking to her, and it's the same sort of thing.
Yeah. So maybe it's just like looking at them and like seeing them. Okay, hey, he's a person. Like she's my wife, right? Maybe it's just asking questions and starting to see how they're doing, right? Check in, start really like, I'm talking like small steps, right? But that's okay because they are steps and they do really matter. And remember, God is at work. He is working. I know sometimes we do not see it, and I can give you story after story of where it's like, I've been so frustrated. God, where are you? Why are you not working? When it seems like that's true, but He is working, and He's shown me that also over and over again. And He can do the things we cannot. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen this in our own marriage and in the couples that we coach, where we really do need someone who's like really got a hardened heart to soften. And we can't do that. We can't do that for them. We can't control them. We can't make them do that, right? But God does that, right? He softens hearts. He restores affection. Maybe like we think they're never going to want to touch me again. But God, He does that stuff, the stuff that we can't even try to do. So that all is really helpful and encouraging to remember as well as you're walking through this.
Yeah, for sure. And even at that point, you might be at a place where you're like, I've tried. I've really tried. I still feel nothing. Like I'm still stuck in this dislike. What do you even do then? A really good question to ask is, what do you see when you look at your spouse in that state? What is what is the story that you're still saying about your spouse? Are you just seeing all of the painful negative narratives that you've been believing for so long? Because that is going to keep you in a stuck place if you're constantly seeing just the ways that they've caused you hurt and pain. And what's very important then is to start to slowly see them as God sees them. Just keep asking yourself that question, like, how does God see my spouse? What kind of compassion does God have for my spouse? How does God see their heart? And ask him that over and over again. Start to work on your own viewpoint, work on your own perception of your spouse so that you can start to break free from this numb, stuck place where you feel like you don't like them.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy for us to look at the other person,
Right.
but it's helpful when we actually just focus on our own transformation. We really focus on God's love for us, right? Obviously, focus, you want to think about God loves them too, but when we invite God's love in, He just does incredible work. It does incredible healing for us. And the more we remind ourselves how we are loved and God has compassion and all these things, we invite that in over the other noise, incredible things happen. So relax into that, right? Let it just fill you to overflowing, where you are overflowing God's love and compassion now onto your spouse. It starts to really show in the way you react to your spouse when you know how loved you are.
Yeah.
Because that overflowing, it speaks, right? It speaks loudly. And another great question just to leave you with, and you can do this again in your quiet time. This is what I love to ask God. I ask him it a lot, and it's really cool to hear what he has to say. But I love to ask him, like, Lord, what are you wanting to heal in me through this season? Or even today, like sometimes I'm just like, Lord, how are you healing me today? Right? And listening for what he has to say, because it's really it's pretty incredible. He is working. He's at work, even when it doesn't seem like it. So if you're in this space where you're just really not feeling it for your spouse, remember, no shame. Yeah. And we are here to walk with you. If you need us, reach out. We do coaching individually or as a couple. And then we, of course, have our memberships for wives and for husbands that walk you through step by step, giving you the tools that you need to heal so you don't feel like, what am I doing? I'm getting discouraged again. I'm right back where I started, right? If you want to have someone walk with you through that, which is so powerful, just find the links in the show notes and we would be happy to walk with you through this. We will see you next week. We hope this was helpful.